What if the future of real estate, media, and faith all collided into one platform? In this video, I talk with the founder of Pray.com to uncover how they're using technology to build powerful platforms for community, content, and commerce. So, Steve, you're a tech guy through and through, and you have this media background, and you find this domain, this website that hasn't fully developed yet. So, let's talk about that, because what you did, looks like a lot of people could do this. They found a brand and you bought it, and now you've grown into this unbelievable spot. So could you start a little bit with your background and, how is it that you saw this opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you mentioned a couple things there, Ken. One, I saw Pray.com as an opportunity. It was an opportunity. It was a massive business opportunity. And as soon as I saw it, I knew that was the opportunity for me. So, I don't know how many times you've had this in your life where you're just kind of exploring, you're being curious, you're looking for what's next, and like something comes out and you just know that's the opportunity for you. You got to dive in. That's what this was for me. And for anybody out there that's kind of going through that exploration phase, if you're lukewarm on it, don't be afraid to pass. Wait until it sucks you in. And for me, I actually wasn't a tech guy. Pray.com is a tech company, but I really grew up as a media guy. And I wasn't even religious, actually. I was into sports. I played football, and growing up, that was my jam.
By the way, for USC, so not just in a small way, right? Like you really played football.
That was it, and I was like, I'm going to the NFL. This is going to be my thing. And unfortunately, my senior year, I ended up getting hurt really bad. I dislocated my shoulders, and coming back my senior year, I realized I wasn't going to be able to go to the NFL. And so that was like a dream crushing moment for me. And I had this like major setback, or it felt like a major setback, for like a 22-year-old, it was like a major setback, right? And I ended up taking an entrepreneurship class at USC. And the first day of class, my professor gave us a homework assignment. He said, think of a business that couldn't exist 5 years ago that would boom 5 years from today. And I said there should be a company that makes professional YouTube videos for corporations. And my teacher said, what's YouTube? So to give you an idea, this is 2008, right? YouTube's like brand new. And I showed my teacher YouTube, and he said, this is a good idea. And I started that while in school. Like I had to do all these homework assignments for like a pretend company. And I figured instead of actually doing this stuff on paper, let's do it for real and make it a real business so I can actually get paid to do my homework, right? Like that's what any entrepreneur would do.
Yeah.
And I started that company. And Ken, by the time I graduated in 2010, I actually had an office in New York and LA, and we're building out all the YouTube channels for Herbalife, Amgen, Coldwell Banker, Marriott, Los Angeles Dodgers. So I was flying all over the world, making videos for the internet, basically. I'm hanging out with these wealthy older dudes that have these big businesses, and they want to learn how to reach, engage, and monetize audiences. And when I did that, Ken, I didn't go to film school, so I didn't like learn some kind of proper process. It really was something that was rooted in curiosity and creativity and critical thinking. So like those like three C's, the curiosity, the creativity, and the critical thinking, that's kind of how I got started. And as we get into like the business evolution for me, you'll see that bubble up. And I think that's even relevant for people today as AI is starting to come into play. So I built this agency business, this service business, making videos for other people. And that business is really, you're selling labor, you're selling hours of work. And that was how I learned how to be an entrepreneur. And it was how I learned the media business. But at some point, my service business started to really exhaust me. And I capped out. I couldn't work any more hours in the week. You can really only work like 110 hours a week until you just burn out, right? And so I decided I needed to make some kind of product business. And so after that, I started something called Video Fort. And what Video Fort was, is it was a stock video footage company. So if you've heard of stock photos or stock videos, that's basically what we did. It was a media licensing company. So we had video clips. So we had the largest video footage library of animals in nature. So if you've ever seen Discovery Planet Earth, we owned all that footage. We owned the largest aerial footage library. So if you have an Apple TV and you see those screensavers, we did all those. So we had these digital products and we learned how to sell digital products, media licensing. And that was a significantly different type of media business than my service business. One was selling labor, it was selling hours. The next one, I could sell products and make money while I slept. So that was pretty cool. After that business, I became the CEO of the largest aerial production company in the world. So we filmed all the major motion pictures and TV shows from helicopters mostly. So CSI, Law and Order, Mission Impossible, Transformers. And then we also did a couple of other things. We did aerial surveillance. So we did confidential surveillance missions for FBI, DEA, Border Patrol, foreign governments, spy helicopters, basically. And then we also did air medical transport or helicopter air ambulance. So we did patients and organs hospital to hospital. And Ken, that really was another evolution from me. In the first evolution, if I went from a service business to a product business, what I learned when I went to the helicopter company is that I actually went to a platform business. And our platform was this aircraft, right? These helicopters. And we could actually make money multiple ways. We had revenue diversification, right? We could do services, we could create products. There were a lot of different types of contracts and income streams that we could combine. And one of the things I learned there, Ken, was the stability of a business when you have multiple revenue streams. It's like totally different, right? One revenue stream could be tanking while the other one's booming, and like net, they blend out, and it's really nice. And if you can have a business like that you can scale, it's really a beautiful thing. Unfortunately, on September 11th, 2015, my business partner died in a plane crash outside Medellin, Colombia. So we were down in Medellin. We're filming a movie with Tom Cruise called American Made. And unfortunately, my partner took a small plane from the jungle, from this narco jungle airstrip back into Medellin, and the plane crashed. And to give you an idea of where I was at, it was Friday, September 11th, 2015. I was running a senior leadership team meeting in a boardroom, had our whole company there. I'm 29 years old. I was the 29-year-old CEO of this multinational helicopter company. And I found out that my mentor and my business partner who started the company died on the job. And that was just really hard for me. I didn't know what to do at that time. And it was like a very high profile thing. Over the next 72 hours, I'd address the press, ABC, NBC, TMZ. And really over the next couple months, I struggled to be, I think, like just a great leader. Fortunately, I was surrounded by a team of great leaders. So we had some really incredible people at the company. I was able to learn a lot from them. And one of those people at the company ended up just checking in on me one day before work. He just wanted to see how I was doing. And he also wanted to see what I was doing to take care of myself. And when he asked me, hey, boss, what are you doing to take care of yourself? I basically said, I'm going to Soul Cycle. I'm doing core power yoga. I'm drinking green juices. I'm trying to figure it out, bro. And he said, "Hey, why don't you listen to this podcast from my pastor?" And I said, "Pastor? Isn't that like a fake priest? Like they can like get married and have kids?" Like, first of all, I'm Catholic. Second of all, I hate being Catholic. Third of all, I'm actually Jewish. My 23andMe says I'm Jewish. So like I don't think I'm even allowed to listen to whatever this like pastor podcast thing is. And he said, "Dude, listen to the podcast." So he shares this podcast of some pastor from some place called Flower Mound, Texas. I had no idea where that was. I'd never been there. And I listened to this podcast. And Ken, it was so legit. This guy was like epic, better than Tony Robbins, better than Gary Vaynerchuk, better than any of these like motivational people. And the message that he had for me really impacted me. And I would say like there wasn't this moment where like God came down from heaven and like, lifted me up out of my car with like wings. But it was just something where at that age, during that season of my life, I realized that I was missing something bigger than myself. I was missing a deeper sense of purpose. I was missing a desire to help others, to leave a legacy of helping others. I was really self-focused, right? As like most 29-year-olds with big goals would be. And I just started listening to these podcasts. And over time, I became a Christian. And that's really where the seed of the idea for Pray.com got started. Over time, we had to deal with kind of a very messy situation, a lack of estate planning, having to break up companies, sell off assets, a lot of just kind of worst case scenario type stuff for any family that's lost a super successful dad as an entrepreneur. I decided that I was meant to do something new and meant to do something bigger. And I kept thinking about these podcasts because I had started listening to them every day on the way to work and on the way home or when I was going to the gym. And I thought, how come I never knew about this before? Not like Christianity in general, but like these podcasts, this type of content. And the only conclusion I could come to, Ken, was there was no digital destination for faith content. We have a digital destination for sports content, ESPN. Why is there no equivalent of that for faith? And if there was an equivalent of that for faith, what would it be called? So, like any good, curious entrepreneur, I went to GoDaddy and started typing in all these flavors of domains. And the best domain I could come up with, Ken, was digitalfaith.com, which is a way worse name than pray.com. And I bought that domain, and that was kind of like the working title of the idea. And it wasn't too long thereafter where I was able to buy the domain pray.com. And the domain at the time was not being used. It was not a brand that was developed. There was nothing on the website, actually. And so I structured a really great deal with the owner of the domain. I was able to get a 5-year license for the domain with the exclusive option to buy at a fixed strike price. So I was able to license the domain for $1 for 5 years. So I was basically able to get this thing for 5 years, play with it, see if we can make something out of it. And if that worked, then I had the exclusive option. So nobody else had that option, just me, to buy. And we predetermined the strike price, which was about a couple $1,000,000. So it was a nice chunk of change to buy that domain. But the owner really believed in the vision that I had of going out and building the digital destination for faith. And he also said, if God believes in it too, you'll be able to buy the domain for a couple $1,000,000. And that's really what happened. And we launched this thing in 2017. And today in 2025, we reach about 7 million people a day with faith content. So that's kind of like the genesis of um, where where we were and where we are.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thanks. I tell you what, I've heard pieces of those stories over the years from knowing you, but it was really, really special to hear it all cobbled together like that. I think that it's interesting because right now you're not really operating with just a solely mission, based on financial focus, like a lot of young people are. Like you said it perfectly when you were 29 years old, where you're like, we are a little selfish with big goals, and that's, I think, is fine. But then now what's driving you in this next chapter is much, much bigger, right? And so how does that resonate as you go out and raise capital, go out and hire people, go out and put together partnerships and all that stuff? Have you found that when you lead with that, because I think some people might think of that as a weakness, or they might even think of that as, a crutch of some sort?
I have a few different perspectives on that question. The first one is just my selfish perspective. From a selfish perspective, Ken, all the best entrepreneurs that I know, all the guys I want to be like the Ken McElroys of the world, or my business partner, Alan Perwin, that passed away. Like all the guys where I'm like, when I grow up, I want to be like that dude. They all combine margin and mission. They all combine profit and purpose. I had not met an entrepreneur that I wanted to be like that didn't care about both. They always care about both. And that was just, I got the exposure to that when I got to basically be mentored by Alan when he tossed me the keys to his company. And I got to watch him say, no, no, no. For the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, we're giving them a helicopter for free. We're not going to charge them. And I go, dang, like that's badass, Ken. Like,
Yeah.
how awesome of an entrepreneur do you have to be giving out free Sikorsky helicopters to the Children's Hospital? Like, that's the kind of powerful entrepreneur that I want to be. And so selfishly, I go, okay, that's what the elite are doing. Their margin and mission, their profit and purpose. So that's the first part. So that's just who Steve Gatena wants to be when he grows up one day. I think from a company perspective, right? We're pray.com. We're here to grow faith, to cultivate community, and to leave a legacy of helping others. That's our mission, vision, statement combined. So we have to be about that. We have to give people faith at their fingertips. We have to help people make prayer a priority in their life. Like the mission is a real thing. Also, we're a Delaware C Corp, right? We are a for-profit business. We sell software. We sell media content. Like we have to make money. No margin, no mission. So for us at Pray, it's margin and mission. It's profit and purpose. And it's in that order. We also have a foundation where margin and profit doesn't matter. So at Pray Foundation, it's all mission. But at Pray.com, it's margin and mission. I think that the way that I've generally approached fundraising and partnerships and all these other, um, aspects of business is to start with margin, then go to mission, to start with profit, then go to purpose. Because the reality is 99 out of 100 people that I meet in any given day, 99 out of 100 partners that I want to transact with, they don't care about my mission. Their business partner didn't die in a plane crash. Some guy didn't share a sermon with them from a pastor. They have their own mission. And I'm not sure what their mission is. But what they do care about is if we're going to partner together, what's in it for them? How are they going to profit? How are they going to benefit? So I always try to lead with that so that they can understand, iHeart is a massive customer of ours because we do over 150 million podcast downloads a year. and we're partnered with iHeart, and they've been a great partner. And they don't care about evangelism and discipleship through our podcast program. They care about you just sold 150 million, or you just had 150 million podcast downloads. It generated 2 billion ad impressions. How many of your ads can we sell, and how much is that going to make us at iHeart? So I always start with the numbers first for our partners so that we could then talk about, and isn't it awesome that you're going to make a lot of money doing this and you're going to help people? And by the way, you're going to help people in the way that we at pray.com help people. And if you don't like how we help people, that's okay, because you're still going to make money. So if you only care about the money, you're in. And if you care about the money and you care about helping people, you're double in. So that's kind of how I've approached it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, one of the things that there's a real estate angle here too. You know, as you know, like, so my dad was one of 9 children, and 4 of his brothers were pastors. So
Nice.
I grew up around this, and what I realized at a young age is that they were high in faith, but they struggled with the business piece. They struggled with, there always seemed to be cycles of the money coming in and how it was being managed. And I guess they were learning business on the job, but really, it was secondary. And sometimes, it showed up in not so good ways. And my dad was in a situation many times where he was, helping them keep the doors open, and so I'd like to start at the grassroots level if we could, because there's a real estate component, a big real estate component. I mean, when you drive around and you see these churches everywhere, and there's a real there's an as people, as much as they hate to say this, there, each one has to run, and it has to run, and it has real people on the payroll, and you have to deliver. And so you guys are doing an incredible service at the ground roots level. Can you, because I think that's, I mean, it's great to have the downloads and all those things. I get it. And obviously that's where it all heads. But can you talk about that component? Because you guys are changing the landscape.
Yeah, I think, if we think about this from a real estate perspective, you have about 200,000 brick and mortar locations in the United States that we call churches, right? And we'll refer to them as small businesses. They would not refer to themselves as small businesses, right? But we can look at them as a small business. So you have 200,000 of these brick and mortar small businesses. And these businesses, essentially, they operate kind of like a comedy club mixed with a community center, right? So 1 or 2 nights a week, they've got people coming in to hear someone stand up on a microphone and speak, right? And maybe they give money and maybe they don't. And then, Sunday through Sunday, there's a community center for different activities, whether that's an after school basketball league, or teaching people English as a second language, or running a soup kitchen, right? So you have these brick and mortar locations. And the way that it worked pre-pandemic is, people would go to the church in their local community, and maybe the person up on the microphone, the pastor, maybe that person was exceptional and they were like the best pastor in the world, or maybe they were, let's call it, below average. And really, the fact that we have this kind of community center that's doing good things in the community, that's actually why we continue to come here as a customer. That's why we come to this brick and mortar location. And we also give money to this brick and mortar location. And there's a few different ways that we give money, right? So a few different revenue streams, let's call it. One would be like a subscription revenue stream, right? Or we could call that a tithe, where I'm just giving money kind of on a recurring basis. And another could be a one-time purchase, right? So you could subscribe to a magazine and it gets delivered to your house, Or you could just buy a magazine off the rack. That'd be a one-time purchase. So churches would also have a one-time purchase. And sometimes the one-time purchase would be a campaign to raise money for the soup kitchen or for the building fund or what have you. So we had a bunch of local people that would walk to our brick and mortar location. They listen to the content from the guy on stage and they care about the local causes. So they either subscribe or they do one-time purchases. And that's how a church worked pre-pandemic. What happened during the pandemic is it was the first time ever in history that 100% of the churches were forcefully closed down in the United States of America. Now, many people think that that's like a massive civil rights violation. We don't have to get into that. The facts are, it was the first time ever in history that the churches were closed. And you had all of these content creators, these pastors that were going up on stage every Sunday, talking into a microphone, and they had no stage to go up onto. They had nowhere to go. And they had no way to get their message to their audience. So you started seeing churches do a whole bunch of things. They would go on YouTube and try to put sermons on YouTube. They would spin up a podcast and try to upload a sermon to Spotify. They would spin up Zooms and they would hit their email list and circulate a bunch of Zoom links for our live Zoom church this Sunday. One of the things that we did at pray.com is we decided we were going to build the platform, the software platform for the future of faith. We saw the lack of traffic to the brick and mortar location. And we said, hey, that looks a lot like the lack of traffic to movie theaters. And when people stopped going to movie theaters, all they started doing is they started going online to Netflix. And we were seeing that with our app, with pray.com. But now we realized we needed to give software tools and a software platform to all of the churches, to all of the content creators in the United States. So we built a SaaS platform, software as a service platform, so that the content creators of the churches could upload their content so they could reach more people. We gave them communication tools so they could engage with their audience. And then we gave them monetization tools so that they could get donations through subscription or one-time gifts. So reach, engagement, and monetization. Or if you're from a church or you're a pastor, you might call that evangelism, discipleship, and impact. Evangelism, reaching more people, right? Every small business wants to reach more people. Engagement, right? They would call that discipleship. That's connecting with my customer on an ongoing basis. And then monetization or impact, right? How do we get the cash flow mechanisms to start working so that our operation is hopefully sustainable and then also growing and thriving?
So one of the things that I want to just point out here, it seems so obvious now. We've all kind of walked through these platforms that have rolled up, right? Like a music platform, whether it's Spotify, Pandora, or Apple, that's a platform. Travel, books, there's so many others. And what you saw was a very fractionalized 200,000 bricks and mortar with no platform. Was that accurate?
Yeah, that's right.
And so you're like, I'm going to be the world's best roll up for that. And then from there, that became probably one of the big, one of the big ahas, right? In this, I let me ask you this: did you foresee this before you bought Frey.com?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
We had this mapped out, Ken. And actually, what we tried to do in the beginning is we mostly, my co-founder, Matt Potter, that you're also friends with, mostly Matt, but also myself, went door to door, knocking on church doors, trying to get them to join our platform. And Matt has probably been to, no joke, like over 1,300 churches door knocking. For me, I'm closer to like 200, 250.
Yeah.
So now you know who works the hardest, okay? But we went, Ken, and we said, hey, will you come join our platform? Will you put your content on our platform? And this is in 2017. And they basically said, no. They said, that sounds like a lot of extra work. Okay. I'm in the people business. I'm not in the technology platform business. Okay. So I really just want to talk to people that are in my local area. And I don't even know who you guys are. I never even heard of you. So if I was going to put my stuff on a platform that most certainly wouldn't be something called pray.com, I'd put it on YouTube because that's like the biggest one. Right. And so that was not something that I had anticipated. So if we talked about in the beginning of this kind of conversation, these three pillars that I like to build on, which is curiosity, creativity, and the third one is critical thinking. I was curious about faith content as a category. I was able to be creative in this platform idea. But when I took my business plan to the customers and they slammed the door in my face and said, kick rocks, guy, then I had to do the critical thinking, right? And the critical thinking part of me was, okay, well, if we can just create the world's best faith-based content ourselves, then we'll be able to attract the audience, the customers. We'll be able to get the foot traffic to our location, and then they're going to want to rent space at our location. And so that was the critical thinking that we had to do, and then the execution that we had to do to then circle back and ask them for their content. Except, Ken, what I was not planning on was a global pandemic where 100% of churches were forced to close their doors, because then they didn't have a location. They didn't even have other options, right? And so that pandemic, which, obviously destroyed a lot of lives, that pandemic also was a major tailwind for our business, and it accelerated the adoption of our platform from our customers. So,
Which created your fourth C, which was community.
yeah, absolutely. And when we build all of our tools, just because I like the C's, the three C's, this one actually comes from my co-founder, Ryan Beck, our CTO. He builds software on three pillars, which is content, community, and contributions.
Mm-hmm.
And so every time he goes in the lab to build some software, some technology for these pastors, he's asking himself, how is this helping them, get more content out there or make their content faster, cheaper? How is it helping them create more community, or how is it helping them generate more contributions? So content, community, contribution. It's also a very similar idea as the evangelism, discipleship, and impact.
I love this. This is so fun to talk about. Okay, so now you're getting people to jump on board, and so you build it, they will come, right? But that wasn't a straight line, clearly. But now, it's interesting because having been around it as a kid, I knew that faith, churches, it was kind of on its way down, right? The tithing was down, the raising money was down, churches were closing. It seems like maybe, and I'd love to hear your perspective. Has it kind of flattened out? Because it seems like now with all this chaos, it seems like people are kind of moving back to faith again. And I'm positive that you guys are one of the reasons. Because of we went to dinner the other night, you and I, with our friend, and he's like, oh yeah, I subscribe to you guys, and I listen to you all the time. So you're starting to get, I would say, people that are on the move, on the go, on the run, and now they have it at pray.com. What are you guys seeing there from the grassroots?
So I think one way to think about religion is, I'm a very visual person, so I wish I had a whiteboard. But one way to think about it, Ken, is if we wanted to draw like a little matrix here, and on our x-axis we had single player, like a video game, single player, and on the other side we had multiplayer, and then on our y-axis we had analog and we had digital. So I'm just going to write this down so I don't get lost here. So single player, multiplayer. I'm on one axis, analog and digital on the other. So an example of multiplayer analog, multiplayer analog would be, you and Danielle, you guys go to a church in person. You show up, analog, multiplayer, multiple people. That is on the decline. It's still on the decline, and it's declining faster than it's ever declined. So if you are in that business, the multiplayer analog business of church, right? Again, we're using business just to contextualize for our audience here. But if you're in that business and you own brick and mortar facilities so that you can do multiplayer analog church, that's a hard business to be in. It's dropping. That's the movie theater business.
Yeah.
It's not a great business to be in. Now, if you're in the digital single player business, so I'll give you an example. Let's say, Pastor, what's your uncle's name? One of the pastors?
George.
So Pastor George writes a book and he puts his book on Amazon. That's single player digital. So there are more people than ever that are going to Amazon Kindle and downloading Pastor George's book and reading the book by themselves. Single player digital experience. More people than ever doing that. It's booming. It's at an all-time high, right?
Is that
So
Rick Warren did, right? Rick Warren did that.
That's right. Purpose-Driven Life. Rick Warren. Nearly 100 million copies of the Purpose-Driven Life have been sold. One Harry Potter book sells about 60 million copies. So that shows you how popular single player digital is. Now, there's also multiplayer digital. That might mean we're in a WhatsApp group together and we talk about like a Bible study and we can hop on a prayer call. You might have heard of these things called prayer calls where my wife, she just recently had an eye stroke and a friend of ours did a prayer call for us. So that was multiplayer, right? Bunch of people hopped on a Zoom call and we prayed together, right? Digital is booming. It's absolutely booming. And it's really hard to measure analog single player, right? Because that would be like you personally going out and praying outside, right? Or you personally going on a Camino and walking, a long spiritual traditional walk, right? It's harder for us to measure that. But what we can measure really well is the multiplayer analog. People going to church, it's collapsing. And what we can measure even better is the single player and multiplayer digital, which is absolutely booming. So my takeaway is this. If we think about this from a business landscape, the shifts that are happening for brick and mortar church is very similar to the shifts that are happening in brick and mortar retail. 20 years ago, you used to be able to have your little independent t-shirt shop selling t-shirts at the mall. But today, that's not sustainable. However, you can have your independent t-shirt shop on Shopify or on Amazon selling t-shirts. You just don't rent retail space at the mall because the math doesn't work. I think what's going to happen, Ken, over the next 20 years is we're going to see a lot of these churches close their doors and they're going to have to repurpose that real estate. And also that real estate, most of that real estate is owned free and clear. There's no debt because there's incredible people like Ken McElroy that had like a brother or an uncle or somebody that wanted to be a pastor. And so they bought them some real estate or, they donated, the community came together. But now those facilities, they're not only underutilized, some of them aren't utilized at all. And you have these nonprofits that are holding these assets. And they're these land-rich, cash-poor nonprofits. And they need to either sell the assets or repurpose them for something that is on mission. So my prediction for our space is you're going to see a lot of these conversions. You'll see a lot of churches that they get converted to some kind of multifamily, or they get converted to a low income, or they're donated to the city, or there's some kind of public-private partnership that kind of happens where you start seeing disaster recovery centers, or soup kitchens, or even like subsidized or low income urgent care or Medicare, Medicaid kind of health clinics that end up being able to be run from these locations.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. 'Cause we went to a new church. We went to a new church. I won't mention the name. Not far, maybe 2 blocks from us, and it's massive on a half a block. You could tell back in the day it was something, with classrooms and parking on two sides, and there's probably 75 people in there, maybe 100 at the most. I mean, and I was like, wow. And also, at no fault to theirs, because I'm a real estate guy. It it was the deferred maintenance. I was creeping up, like I could
Yeah.
see it. I mean, just because I'm walking, this is what I do. I have a curse. My wife's like, really? Because I get out in a parking lot at a shopping center. I walk and I look, oh my God, the curbs aren't painted and the parking lot needs redone and the lights are broken. And I just have this in my brain. I do this no matter what. And I can, you can tell that they're undercapitalized. And so they're starting to deteriorate, right?
Yeah. And I mean, for you, it's got to be crazy, right? Because you go to this place where you're like, wow, when they got this church 20 years ago, this was like a $3 million property that was gifted to these guys. Now it's a $10 million property, but this is like a $350,000 roof. Those two ACs over there are 50 grand each. We got, the carpet, the wood floors, the this. Next thing you know, you've already tallied up the $1.5 million bill that they need to service the property, which seems like it would be no big deal if you owned a $10 million property outright, but they don't have the cash because the 75 people that go to the church don't donate that much. They donate enough to cover the pastor's salary, and they donate enough to do, the after school program for the kids and like the soup kitchen.
There's a real opportunity here for anybody listening to really to help the community and to breathe life into these properties, because they are incredibly well located, and they got phenomenal people inside of them, right?
Yeah, really great people. And that's, I think, the coolest thing for me, Ken, as an entrepreneur, because I'm profit driven, I'm margin driven, and today it's margin and mission. Maybe one day in my life it'll be pure mission, right? Maybe one day it'll be pure purpose, not just profit and purpose. But as an entrepreneur, I'm driven by that. The best thing for me coming into this industry was being able to meet truly selfless people. These people that are there to help people that have no one else to help them. These people that are there to do jobs that I don't want to do. Like, I don't want to go out and feed homeless people all day long. And thank God that there are people out there who are willing to do that. Like, that is a true blessing on our society. And I'm so thankful for the entrepreneurs and the people that are really good at making money that give some of that money back and give some of that money to helping these people who are out there doing these purpose-driven things, because we need those people to have healthy and thriving communities. And so, I get comments sometimes when I tell people I do pray.com, because, a lot of people don't like religion. And it's like, oh, well, isn't that just the pastors that have all these private jets? And one, no,
Not
no, no. Like, these guys take an oath of poverty
yeah.
to go help people. Like, it is literally the furthest thing away from that, right? And I'm just like, every day that I get to talk to these pastors, I just feel like I become just a little bit of a better person, just by being able to be around them. So
I tell you what, they always put themselves behind others. Like, I mean, it's just one of those things that, it's really something to aspire to. I wanted to, we've got a little bit of time here. I wanted to jump into AI, chat GPT. I know, first of all, you guys are on this rocket ship of growth. It's really fun to watch. And a lot of people are sitting back going, they're not early adopters, right? They're Luddites, really, in so many ways. They're resisting this in a lot of ways. Can you talk about how ChatGPT AI is changing, the use of the platform, the users, how they use it, and how I'm sure you're 10x, 20x as a result of this.
Yeah. I mean, I think, there's a lot of people say AI, right? And AI doesn't mean one thing, it can mean many things. So we'll talk about just a few of the things. One of the ways that we're using AI software tools is to create content that we were not able to create before, for the budgets that we have to create content. So one example is, um, before, let's call it 2025, it used to cost us about $1,000 to make 1 hour of scripted podcast content. So we script out our podcasts and we have like Disney voiceover actors narrate them. It sounds like Game of Thrones if you go listen to like if you were to go to BibleInAYear.com, one of our podcasts is the Bible in a Year. And if you listen to it, it sounds like a Game of Thrones episode. So it used to cost us about $1,000 to make 1 hour of content, one podcast episode. And it took us about 10 days to do. Today, it costs us $60 to make 1 hour of content, and it takes about 1 hour to do. So from a cost savings perspective, I mean, we dropped that thing like 99%. So it's like 99% cheaper for us to make 1 hour of content. And we went from 10 days to 1 hour to make that content. So as a practical use case for me in the business, what that means is I can make more content. It's also better content. And I'm able to make it faster. And I'm able to make it cheaper, right? So I'm seeing those cost savings in the business, which means my profit margins are growing. Now, what I expect over time to happen is that the market is going to get flooded with content, right? These tools are allowing us to commoditize content. There's going to be infinite supply of content. And when there's infinite supply of anything, right, it becomes less valuable. It's just kind of like Powell just printing more money, right? Those dollars are becoming less valuable because we're just hitting the print button, baby. So for content, unfortunately, I can't just buy Bitcoin, right? You could do that with your dollars. You could go buy Bitcoin or you could go buy real estate, right? So what do you do in the content business if all of a sudden content becomes a commodity and the supply becomes infinite? Well, if you go back and you study history and you look at from the dawn of the printing press, right? In the beginning, there were only a few of these things and books were super expensive. But when everybody got a printing press, right, the price of books drops. When everybody could print newspapers, the price of a newspaper drops. When everybody could print magazines, the price of the magazines drops. When anybody could make a TV channel, right, the price of the video content drops. So you see this happen throughout history. And the best businesses, the best media businesses, they always go through this process of bundling and unbundling. Bundling and unbundling. So you end up with first this kind of bundled product, right? For you, it might have been ABC, NBC, and CBS. And you've got these 3 TV channels, right? Fast forward to the time you have 10-year-old kids and you've got 300 TV channels, right? You got MTV, you got Golf Channel, right? So the unbundling happened. And when you unbundle, what you're doing is you're making a specialty product for a niche that's willing to pay. So bundled, then unbundled. So for us, we know that the content is going to get commoditized. And so what I believe is you have to get more niche. You have to build more of a brand because when the consumer is overwhelmed by choices, if there's infinite content, they're going to pick what they know. They're going to pick the brand that they recognize, whether that brand is called Pray.com, whether that brand is called ESPN, or people can be a brand, right? So when there's infinite real estate YouTubers, Ken might be the only guy that is the brand they can recognize. When there's infinite macro guys on YouTube, Rebel Capitalist might be the only guy that they recognize. And they're like, I'm going to pick the Rebel Capitalist guy because I could go listen to hundreds of people. So, what I believe is going to happen, Ken, is that the cost for production or the cost for creation is going to collapse. It's going to deflate. And the brands are actually going to become more and more valuable because at some point, you as a consumer, you have to make a decision on what you want to consume. And the way we do that is we pick brands, right? I'm going to go watch the Disney movie because I know that means it's good for my kids. Yes, there's 50 other animated movies I could watch today from random brands that I don't know about, but like Disney equals good quality for my kids. It's safe. I'm picking it. I'm going to go stay at the uh, Four Seasons Hotel because Four Seasons means good quality, right? Even though there's 50 other luxury hotels, boutique hotels I could choose from, I know Four Seasons equals good. So I think that brands are going to become exponentially valuable as AI commoditizes the future of content.
Yeah. Oh, that's the best explanation I've heard in a long time. Steve, I've taken so much of your time this morning. I can't even thank you enough. How can people reach you? What's the best way they can support you and pray.com and your mission?
I think the first way is you can download the Pray.com app. So just go to the App Store, type in Pray.com, download the app. And if you are listening to this and you decide to do that, send me feedback. Specifically, I want what you don't like about the app. So my email is steve@pray.com, STEVE at pray.com. So send me feedback. Say, man, Steve, I wish you had this. I didn't like this. Hearing what we don't like is the only way to get better. So I consider that feedback a gift. And yeah, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. I don't really use social media. So yeah.
Steve, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Again, give your wife a big hug for me, please.
Thanks, Ken.